Welcome to the Down South Packers podcast with me, your host, Anthony Boyd. And today we're going to be going over some of the Packers offseason moves up until this point, starting off with some of the releases and the trades that the Packers have made are here early in the offseason. Elton Jenkins was released, and he ended up getting signed to the Cleveland Browns to go play for them and go block for Shador or Dylan Gabriel or Deshaun Watson or whoever is going to be the quarterback over there. Sad to see him go. I think he had a great time as a Packer. Ended up moving to center for us and played pretty well there. Uh, Happens in the league. It's a business. People are going to move on. So happy to see him go to the Browns and get another chance to play after getting hurt last year. Nate Hobbs was released after his injury riddled one season with the Packers. Never really got to see what he could have been, but when he was on the field, the play wasn't that great. You knew that you were signing a slot corner to go out and play outside, and you're taking a risk with that. But he ends up going to play for the 49ers, probably to go play that slot role again, get more back to where he's comfortable at in that part of the field. But hope he does well. I don't wish any ill will on any of these guys that aren't playing with the Packers anymore. They were Packers at one point. I will support them in their future endeavors. Obviously, Rashawn Gary, his Instagram got hacked at the beginning of free agency. Well, beginning of the free agency window, his Instagram's hacked. There's a giant thank you Green Bay letter that gets released. It comes down. The world freaks out. He says that he was hacked. A couple of days later, he ends up getting traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a fourth round pick, which I think all Packers people are ecstatic about that pick because if you're able to trade Rashawn Gary for a fourth round pick, given his production last season, I think he had seven and a half sacks, and he was good in the run. He's improved as a run defender throughout his career, but just the relentless pursuit of the football hasn't been great for him since he tore his ACL. Never been a huge sack guy, anyways. Not high double digit sacks, but had pretty good production before the ACL injury. After he got paid, it just kind of went downhill. Sad to see that happen, but happy to see that he's able to get a fresh new start. Reunites with Kenny Clark down there in Dallas. That defensive line should be pretty good. You know, you have Rashawn and Kenny and um, Quentin Williams, I believe I said his name right, from the Jets that they got last year. So Cowboys defensive line's getting kind of solid. Maybe this is their year. It always is their year. Probably won't be, but Packers get a fourth round pick out of it. I tweeted that the Packers are Goody keeps beating the old man in Dallas over the head because I think both trades the Packers have came out pretty good. Got Micah Parsons. He ends up tearing his ACL. You don't know that in the moment, but you give up two first rounders for him. I'm okay with that for Micah Parsons. You give me a player of Micah's caliber, watching him get that first sack in week one on Jared Goff, special, something that I will never forget. Um, Getting a sack in his first game as a Packer and just seeing how aggressively he pursued the quarterback, I'm excited to see him come back and play again. He's a dynamic player, and then you get like I said, you get a fourth round pick in this trade. That's a pretty valuable pick. I'll take that one. Early day 3 pick. I'm good with that. I'll live with that one, and the Packers will hopefully turn that into someone that can make a difference for this team. Other big trade, obviously the Packers made this offseason. This isn't someone trading. Well, they did trade someone away. Colby Wooden got traded away, but you get Zaire Franklin. You bring in a 30-year-old linebacker, someone who has some veteran experience for this team. You obviously lose Quay Walker in free agency. He ends up going to the Raiders. You knew that you were going to lose Quay Walker. Those talks didn't progress into much. Didn't think you were going to bring him back. Quay Walker moves on. He wasn't great in pass coverage this past season. Zaire Franklin's a little better in pass coverage than he was, and Zaire had a down year. And the Colts were looking to move on from him. I think there was some internal stuff with Zaire Franklin and the Colts, with stuff that you hear kind of Pat McAfee allude to. Don't take everything Pat says, obviously, but if it relates to the Colts, then I'm sure he knows a good bit about it. Pat kind of alluded to the fact that Zaire Franklin and some stuff in the locker room maybe didn't go well. Zaire also gets away from Jeff Teague. If you watch the Club 520 podcast, and Jeff Teague kind of was picking at NFL players, and him and Zaire got into it a little bit. But he comes over to Green Bay, is reunited with Jonathan Gannon, who he played with new Jonathan in Indianapolis for some time while Jonathan Gannon was in Indy. Zaire Franklin had a quote-unquote down year last year. He still had 125 total tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. That's pretty good production, and I'll take that. Something that kind of came out, I saw it early today when I was looking around at contract stuff, but Zaire Franklin ended up getting a new contract when he got to the Packers. They moved some numbers around, so he's a 2-year, $18 million total contract, and he had a $2 million raise for 2026. Packers people somewhere upset about it. I don't really care about it. You know, you lost a pretty productive linebacker in Quay Walker to free agency. You need to backfill that. You get Zaire Franklin, someone who's been an all-pro level guy. I'm okay with that. Give him a contract, help him feel comfortable. And hopefully he does well this season. I'm scared if he does too well, then it poses some issues with an older linebacker wanting to get paid. Hopefully the Packers bow up and not pay an older linebacker if it comes to that. But I just hope he comes in and plays well, kind of helps out that linebacker position after you lose someone like a Quay Walker, someone who did have a lot of tackles and a lot of production for the Packers, and someone who is very familiar. You bring in someone who's very familiar with Jonathan Gannon and knows who he is, and has had conversation with Zaire Franklin already up until this point. Next thing we're going to jump into free agent signings. But before we do that, I want to ask you to take the time to subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, send it to a friend, share it, have more people come listen to it. I'm thankful for the support, and I hope that you guys continue to support the podcast. And I'm not going to get too much into that, but yeah, like, subscribe, comment, back into free agency. So the Packers free agent signings, they signed Javon Hargrave. I think it's the biggest one. This one is one that was needed. Obviously, this interior of the Packers defensive line was abysmal. Once Devontae Wyatt went down last year, there was no production at the interior of the line. I had a lot of hope in Carl Brooks and Kobe Wooden that they could at least do something, but those guys are more rotational than anything. They're not a starting caliber space eater, as one of my friends likes to call defensive tackles. Those guys don't move the line much. They're going to create a couple of plays in the backfield for you, some negative plays for the offense, but they're not going to really generate any kind of interior pass rush. You get a Javon Hargrave. I know he's older. He's 33, got a 2-year contract. I'm okay with it because the Packers really had no other options in terms of having veteran players in that position. You got rid of Colby Wooden, obviously, to bring in Zaire Franklin, so you lost a defensive tackle there. You bring in Javon Hargrave. Had a decent year last year, had 3.5 sacks, 52 total tackles, and a fumble recovery, which is more than the defensive line outside of Devontae Wyatt had last year. Devontae Wyatt had 4.5 sacks, something like that when he was able to play. You bring in Javon Hargrave, who had 3.5, which is more, 3 total sacks more than the rest of the defensive tackles had for the Packers last year. The rookie Warren Brinson had a half sack, and that was the extent of the pass rush from the interior of the defensive line. You bring someone in, a vet, kind of help out there. He played in Minnesota for 2 seasons. I'm sorry, Minnesota for 1 season. So played in Minnesota last year and played in San Francisco for the 2 seasons before that. He was injured in 2024? He got hurt. 2023, he had a decent year. And in 2022, he was actually in Philly playing under Jonathan Gannon. So Gannon, again, has some familiarity with the player that you're bringing in, and he actually had the best season of his career in 2022, had 11 sacks that year, I believe. And I think I spoke on that when I was talking about Jonathan Gannon and his impact on this team and what he can bring, because he seems to get the best out of his players that he has. Guys overperform. Not over, that sounds mean, but they play a little bit above what you'd expect them to in his system. And for that reason, I'm excited about a player that the Packers brought in. You have a 6'3" corner, Benjamin St-Juste, a guy who has been a rotational piece at points in his career. Had a little bit more playing time last year in Jesse Minter's defense out in L.A. for the Chargers because of some injuries that happened. So he was able to go out there, play, had a pretty good season, ended up with, I think, 1 interception and 7 pass breakups. So had some production out there. The Packers cornerback room is obviously something that's pretty much an issue that everyone knows. Obviously, Hobbs left for a reason. Dave Carrington Valentine in there. You have St-Juste. You have Keyshawn Nixon still there. So you're trying to bring in some more depth into that room, create some competition, make sure these guys aren't comfortable. Hopefully Benjamin St-Juste can at least compete for a position. He's a special teamer. He has been a special team at points during his career, so he offers that as well. But he's 6'3", kind of prototypical size cornerback. He likes to come up and tackle, which I'm a fan of. The Packers need cornerbacks to come up and tackle. We know Carrington Valentine has had the ability to um, read plays, break on the football, but he doesn't finish the play. But Benjamin St-Juste is very good in the open field, very good at making tackles there. I'm excited about that sign, and hopefully he can develop into more and not just be a one-off free agent thing. 2-year, $10 million deal. Obviously, you're just kind of taking a flight on his traits as a player. Commander Shane said he got burnt a lot while he was in Washington, but hopefully he doesn't do that while he's in Green Bay. I'll take the upside on that and let him compete. And here's why I said I was excited about it in terms of Jonathan Gannon. James Bradberry played in a Jonathan Gannon defense. James Bradberry was okay in Carolina. I don't think he was that great when he was here. I live in Carolina, that's why I say that. He wasn't great while he was here, but he had a really good season while he was in Philly underneath Jonathan Gannon in that 2022 season. That Javon Hargrave was also there. That defense just overperformed as a whole. I think Bryce Huff was in that defense, and he also went ballistic. So that entire defensive line ate. I have faith that Gannon can get the most out of Hargrave and St-Juste. Hopefully, he can develop St-Juste into a decent cornerback that the Packers can use at 6'3". But I don't know if signing St-Juste changes what the Packers plan on doing in the draft, if that makes sense. Another signing the Packers have Sky Moore. Signed him to a 1-year deal. He had lots of production last year as a returner for the 49ers. The Packers have struggled in special teams. I don't need to speak on that much. Everyone knows that. That's a given. But a big thing that I struggled with personally with the Packers special teams is I feel like they were so far behind the 8 ball in terms of the new kickoff return. It wasn't very dynamic. The returns weren't great for the Packers ever. You didn't feel like there was ever a chance they were going to break one for 50 yards, at least flip the field, let alone score a return touchdown. Never once felt that way. You could see that they were still kind of messing with stuff. Even in the playoff game against the Bears, you had Keyshawn Nixon and Josh Jacobs back there returning kicks. It just felt kind of disoriented, kind of a mess. But you bring in somebody like Sky Moore, who had a return touchdown last year, did really well for the 49ers in that spot, comes to Green Bay. Also, if you need him on the offensive side, he's more of the depth piece, but Matt LaFleur likes to run a lot of these options where Sky Moore can be used if you choose to use him in that fashion, but I see him as more of a depth piece. Hopefully, Savion Williams, some of those guys get going this upcoming year so that we don't have to use Sky Moore in that way, but the Packers can definitely use Sky Moore in the return game. Hopefully he makes it through the preseason, unlike Mecole Hardman last year. I'm sure Sky Moore will, though. He seems like a better returner at this point for the Packers. Last one I want to talk about, last signing, Sean Rhyan. We also re-signed Darian Kinnard. Darian Kinnard's a depth piece, still developmental guy, using him in that extra lineman, package where you're bringing in a big, it's like a 13 personnel, pretty much. You're having your 2 tight ends and having the extra lineman in. Smash mouth football there. But I want to talk about Sean Rhyan. I said something on Twitter and got drugged for it. I said, I'm happy that they brought back Sean Rhyan. I'm okay with that signing. I know there's some other people out there. I think Cade Mays might have still been out there in the moment. I think Connor McGovern had just signed right before the Sean Rhyan deal was announced. So you knew Connor McGovern was off the table. The Bills brought him back. You saw Sean Rhyan. You bring him back in, give him a 3-year, $33 million deal, which isn't too crazy. It's right on par with what a lot of the other guys got paid. Sean Rhyan moves to center after Elgton Jenkins goes down last year. Sean Rhyan played pretty well at center. I think sometimes he struggled to pick up some of those stunts in the interior of the line, but for the most part, he did well. I'm okay with this move because you leave continuity on the line, and this is what I got drugged for. I'm okay with continuity on the offensive line. These guys need to kind of have this gel going, this mesh between them, understand communication on the line, and keep Jordan safe, keep him on his feet. I don't want to hear more Jordan run like we heard last year from Rasheed Walker. I want to keep Jordan on his feet. So you have Jordan Morgan at left tackle. Now you have Aaron Banks. You bring him back for left guard. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year. Give the Packers a solid anchor on that left side, him and Jordan Morgan being back in his natural position. Sean Rhyan back at center. keeping that guy in the middle, hopefully can stay healthy. Right guard, Anthony Belton, still developing. Let him get better there. I have faith in him. I said it on Twitter. He actually ended up liking the tweet. I thought that was pretty cool. I said, keep Anthony Belton, let him develop, bring in somebody else to kind of push him a little bit. But I think Anthony Belton can be good in that right guard spot, which also confirms to me that he's fine playing right guard. He's not upset about not being out at tackle like he was in college. And then at right tackle, obviously, you have Zach Tom coming off of the torn patellar tendon that he played on all season last year and tried to fight through. Pray that his recovery is going well and that he'll be back close to 100%, getting ready for this upcoming season. So that offensive line solidified. This unit could continue to gel together and protect Jordan, keep him on his feet. When Jordan is on his feet, he's the best quarterback in the NFL with a clean pocket. There's nobody close to him. His EPA's out of the roof. I mean, Jordan loves elite when he's on his feet. So this offensive line can do that. They'll be in a great spot. I have faith in that happening. I'm happy that they brought back Sean Ryan. Obviously, you have a lot of people griping on Twitter because the Packers didn't make any splashy signings. I don't think they needed to. This is a very Gutekunst thing, and I think he spoke to it. I don't know if it was at the Combine. Might have been at the Combine where he spoke on it, but he said you can't max out the credit card because it hurts you down the line, and I'm okay with that thought process because we're paying a top quarterback in the league. You're paying Micah Parsons. Christian Watson still needs an extension. I think he proved last year that he's worth an extension. And with that Alex Pierce signing at the beginning of free agency, Alex Pierce got a lot more than I thought he'd get, which makes it hard for the Packers. The Packers are going to have to pony up some money to extend Christian Watson because I believe Christian Watson is more valuable to this offense than Alex Pierce is to the Colts offense. With that being said, Chris Ballard out in Indianapolis doesn't make very smart decisions all the time, so I don't know if you want to follow him up. Don't do that, please, Goody, but pay Christian what he's deserved. He proved last year that he's a key cog in the wheel of this offense, and in order for it to get going, you need Christian Watson, so pay him well. And then Tucker Kraft was emerging as the top tight end in the NFL, honestly, last year until he got hurt. He needs an extension as well. So there's some money that needs to be allocated. I think the Packers still have $28 million in cap space right now. Again, no splashy signings, but you don't want to hurt yourself over-signing and overspending in free agency. They kind of got pieces that they needed, created some depth at some spots so that in the draft you're not needing and hurting for a position. You don't have to reach in certain spots because you don't have anybody in that position. With that being said, I think the Packers are going to be looking at cornerback at pick 52. I don't know why they wouldn't be looking at quarterback at pick 52, but your linebackers are decent. Edge rushers, you're okay with right now. You solidified the interior of the defensive line, bringing in Javon Hargrave. Offensive line, you have your starting five. You can get some depth later in the draft. Receiver room, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they drafted a receiver at 52, but I don't think they'll take one that early. Safety room's great. Obviously, you saw Bullard, McKinney, and Evan Williams there. I think cornerback's the position that you go after. And with everything pre-draft that you've heard and seen, Malik Muhammad's been hosted on a couple of visits. I'd see the Packers possibly taking him or Chris Johnson out of San Diego State, depending on which one of them are there. I could see either one of those guys being Packers, surefire Packers if they're there at 52, and I'd be fine with the cornerback pick there. Somebody with some ball production I'm fine with, and that'll be the first pick for the Packers. I'm like 99% sure. I know that sounds crazy. I don't know what the Packers front office is thinking, but I'm very confident that the Packers are going to be taking a cornerback at pick 52. Another move I like to see the Packers make is just bringing another developmental quarterback at backup. You brought in Malik Willis a few years ago to be the backup, and it ended up going really, really well. Bring in Anthony Richardson maybe, depending on what the Colts are asking for him. I haven't been a huge AR fan. My friends will tell you. We're in North Carolina, so I'm in South Carolina, but we're right here by the Panthers, so you hear a lot of comparisons between an Anthony Richardson and a Bryce Young. A lot of people had faith in Bryce Young here. Some gave up on him. Some people had more faith in Anthony Richardson type deal because Anthony Richardson had the rocket arm and he made that one throw to Alec Pierce, and people were, Anthony Richardson's better than Bryce Young. So I've heard a lot about Anthony Richardson, and I haven't been a huge AR believer, but I will say, if you put him in the right spot, maybe give him some time to develop. People say he needs playing time because he didn't play much of college, yada, yada. let him sit for a little bit. Let him learn the game a little bit behind Jordan Love. Come to this Matt LaFleur offense. They say KOC is a quarterback whisperer up there in Minnesota. Maybe Matt LaFleur is a quarterback whisperer, and he could change the life of Anthony Richardson, get him paid. But overall, all in all, I'm super pleased with how the Packers offseason has gone up until this point. Goody's made great moves. I'm okay with it. You're not in cap purgatory by any means. The Packers are in a good spot for the future. Looking forward to see what this front office is able to do in the draft, what players they can bring in. But we'll stay tuned, listening for that. I guess I'll be out with another podcast here soon, probably going mock draft 2.0. Just think about some of the combine stuff that came out, pro day stuff as that keeps rolling in as we lead up here to the draft in about a month or so. So super excited for that. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. I appreciate your support. Again, like and subscribe, share it with a friend if you're listening to it on a podcast app. Thank you. Love you all. And as always, go Pack Go.